everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Enabling Digital Transformation with Windows Embedded IoT Solutions, sponsored by Advantech. This webcast is hosted by Visual Studio Magazine and RedmondMag.com. I'm Tracy Cook, and I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping details. We'll have a Q&A session following the presentation. Please enter your questions at any time during the webcast, and we'll answer as many as we can. Advantech has provided some resources that are on your console to the right of your screen, so please take a moment and check those out. And finally, this webcast is being recorded and will be archived for future viewing, and we'll send you an email when the replay is available, and that should be in 24 to 48 hours. And now I'd like to move on to the webcast and introduce Greg Schultz, who's an excellent presenter. It's always a pleasure to have him with us today. So Greg, please take it away.
Great, thanks Tracy. Hello and welcome everybody to today's discussion, Enabling Digital Transformation with Windows Embedded IoT Solutions. This is Greg Schultz of Storage.io. An industry analyst, author, blogger, book author, and also a Microsoft MVP for what that's worth. And that would be for cloud data center management. Joining me today for this fun discussion is going to be Jeff Traeger of Advantech. He's a licensing specialist. Jeff has more than 20 years of experience in the support of Microsoft Windows embedded and IoT software products. Microsoft licensing policy is complicated. Jeff is able to assist his customers with compliance, license grants, additional rights, deliverables, and the embedded IoT product roadmaps. His specialty is helping the OEMs navigate the complex licensing scenarios and to take advantage of programs to benefit them when using Windows Server, SQL Server, Windows IoT Enterprise, and a down-to-earth advocate for his customers and trusted advisor to all. Hey, Jeff, welcome. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Greg. That was a pretty good intro. I think you got it all good. Got it all right.
That's always good to hear. That's a great way to start, is if we've got the basics out of the way. All right.
Definitely.
So as I mentioned, today's discussion is about enabling digital transformation with Windows embedded IoT solutions. And our format today is going to be a discussion and interaction. And again, our topic and our theme is embarking on your digital transformation journey enabled with Windows embedded IoT. And we're going to learn more about Windows embedded IoT, licensing, configuration, differences between various Windows product and licensing options. So with that in mind, just let me bump this here into place real quickly. And this is what we're going to be talking about. Windows IoT, the wide world of IoT and how it's fueling digital transformation, Microsoft embedded and IoT channels, Microsoft Windows embedded IoT operating system, different options, hardware, software, how it comes together, the role that Advantech plays in all of this, and what you can do today. But also important is put your questions into that little entry box on your display in your screen, because we want to get you into this discussion as well. So with that, let me get started here with our actual discussion. And just to tee this up a little bit here, which is digital transformation, or if you want to think of it as a digital transition, it's really about business and information transformation. The embedded smart IoT and intelligent devices are enabling that digital transformation, and it applies to a long list of different industries, different verticals, different segments, different use types. There's a long list of them here, but Jeff's going to be drilling into some of these a bit more here in just a few moments. But I want to put this up as that big picture. Again, it's the wide world of IoT, from sensors for collecting telemetry, commands, control, feedback, configuration, but also working in harsh environments and ruggedized environments and requiring specialized security because of what they're working with and some of the deployments that they're at. But a couple of common themes here is intelligent devices, smart devices, those Internet of Things, those IoT type devices that are out there in the real world, managing, controlling, collecting, processing information in real time, and not just at the focus of the core, but out at the edge, out in the real world where things are taking place and things are happening. So with that, let's jump and take a little bit closer look at this and a little bit about what is fueling all this digital transformation from a Microsoft perspective. And Jeff, if you could walk us through this real quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Greg. So what you're looking at this slide here is just it's a marketing slide from Microsoft, but I think what I'll leave this slide up there, and let you read it. But what I'd like to talk to is just share with you the Internet of Things. Believe it or not, I actually talked to someone the other day and didn't know what IoT was, and they called it IoT. So that was a bit surprising to me, having done this been in this business for a while. But it's the industry term for intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge. And so we've been talking IoT now, if I recall, Greg, you might correct me, but since 2012, 2013, especially with Microsoft trying to get this technology launched in Azure cloud, et cetera. But the whole idea is to power a surge of digital transformations across industries, and in the process, creating new opportunities for OEMs and their enterprise customers to generate more revenue and create better business outcomes from their data that can be collected from the edge and then once it's up to the cloud for analysis. We're talking across a wide range of industries. We're talking financial, ATMs, kiosks. You're going to build better loyalty with your brand. You're going to make things more secure. Retail, better business outcomes there to generate new revenue, turnkey digital signage opportunities, as well as more in-store self-service to make it more convenient. And of course, once again, to collect that data. Maybe there's cameras in those retail stores to be able to see how long you spend within a particular aisle for better marketing opportunities. And then in industrial automation, another great opportunity for IoT, where you can lower costs through predictive maintenance and repairs, as well as improve factory quality assurance with machine learning. And healthcare, another great one, improve quality of service and better business outcome for patients no matter what their location worldwide. You imagine in some areas where there may not be a lot of medical services. If you have an internet connection, a doctor can speak to the patient directly over an internet connection. We're going to be able to save staff time by remotely monitoring assets, as well as protect inventory, reduce errors with pharmaceutical dispensing systems. These are just some examples. Back to agriculture, better yield and higher quality seeds and stuff. So Microsoft is investing over $5 billion in IoT, and they have created tools to create these secure, long-term, manageable solutions. On the IoT cloud, for example, you got data analytics, security capabilities. To achieve your goals, we're talking about Hub, Edge, Azure, IoT Central, and on the edge, we've got sensors such as Azure Sphere, smart devices running Windows 10 IoT, which we're going to spend a lot more of the program talking about today, and server class operating systems such as Windows Server IoT 2019. So basically, to summarize, IoT provides devices with improved and enhanced security, feature manageability, enterprise-grade long-term support, and a worldwide hardware and software partner ecosystem. And let's not forget that Windows allows companies to leverage existing infrastructure and expertise to manage and secure those devices. So that was a lot of words there for one slide, but I wanted to make sure that IoT and the various industries are represented. And that was just an example of a few.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, Jeff. And I mean, if I could, boil it down, IoT, yeah, it is coming up on its 10-year buzzword bingo anniversary, I think. Yeah. But if you think of it old school, it's what we called SCADA, supervisory control data acquisition, but all the way to this new school. When I went to the dentist office a week or so ago, and they're doing the x-rays and they've got you hooked up for your blood pressure, all these other things, that's IoT. That's the wide world of IoT.
And don't forget your homes. We have your smart refrigerator, smart washing machines. You got Alexa, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Absolutely. I just changed out a furnace filter, and it's got the little Bluetooth sensor on it. Yeah, it's all around us. I think that's the key thing, is that it's not just the wide world of IoT. It's all around us in all directions. Hey, Jeff,
Sure.
let's move the conversation along here, and let's take a look at, we've talked about Windows, we've talked about IoT. Let's start bringing this in a bit and talk to us about Windows for IoT, a scalable solution platform. What does that mean? What does it include? What does it entail?
Yeah, so Windows for IoT in Microsoft lingo would be what products are available for IoT solutions. And so what Microsoft has done is created basically four solutions. Let's just call it that: Windows 10 IoT Core, Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, Windows Server IoT 2019, and SQL Server IoT 2019. Now, these terms are not new to anyone, I'm sure. Probably the first one, IoT Core, is going to cause more people's heads to get to, more people to scratch their heads and say, just what is that? And this talk's not going to focus on that because it's just not relevant to this talk. Let's just say that. But for those of you that have been looking to Core and thinking about Core, maybe have been building products based on Windows CE and looking for another smaller footprint operating system to take over where Windows CE and Windows Embedded Compact from Microsoft are leaving you. This was Microsoft's attempt, Windows IoT Core, to create a smaller footprint operating system based on the Win 10 kernel. There's been some challenges. The market hasn't adapted to it just yet. So currently, if you are in the process of looking at IoT Core, it's Microsoft's recommendation not to begin any new projects right now. I can give you more details offline to anyone who may be thinking about IoT Core, but they will continue to support the current version for the existing 10-year life cycle. So Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, of course, that's going to be the primary focus of the talk today, because this is where many of our customers at Advantech who purchase our industrial PCs are putting on their machines to power their applications. Windows Server IoT, of course, it's no different than Server 2019 you see on your enterprise. The term IoT, by the way, I'll explain a little bit more about that, why you see it here in this slide. The same thing with SQL Server IoT. These are the same, Windows Server and SQL Server, the same products that you find in other Microsoft channels, just we have the name IoT in it, which means it's from the IoT channel. There you go. Scalable solutions from Windows.
Outstanding. So
yeah,
go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, I thought I jumped right into it to make sure we don't run out of time, Greg. So since I just threw up the slide there before, had 4 different operating systems on it, what do you need to consider when choosing an embedded operating system or an IoT operating system? And by the way, I'm going to use the word embedded IoT back and forth here, so forgive me for that, but it is something. I've been doing this for 20 years, and back in the early days, we all called it embedded. This is where Windows CE came into play, then XP, then NT embedded, then XP embedded, and so on. So basically, choosing an IoT operating system, if you think about IoT as being an operating system for Internet of Things, for an edge device that's out in the field, that's serving a dedicated purpose, you want your operating system to have long-term support. You want your operating system to have at least as long a support as your hardware does. The last thing you want to be doing is having to upgrade your operating system as quickly as Microsoft wants you to. Then, if you're used to an IoT, if you're used to Microsoft providing updates, you're looking at every 2 to 3 years. But an IoT operating system will provide you a support length of 10 years. You want to make sure you can get those OS updates when you want them, when you need them, without breaking anything in your system. IoT operating system provides you that capability to do that. And of course, you want your system to be as secure as possible. With Win 10 IoT Enterprise, for example, there are special advanced features within that operating system to make that operating system as customized as you need it to be as secure as possible. And of course, manageability and device management are very important these days. How are you going to get these updates to your system? Windows 10 IoT takes advantage of all the current Microsoft strategies for device management. You don't have to create or make anything new up. It's right there for you. And it is the full-featured operating system we all see in Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 Home but it has different features that make it more suitable for OEMs who are building these dedicated devices. So these are the key features I think you need to consider when choosing an IoT operating system.
Great. And Jeff, thanks for walking us through that. Helped put some perspective around it. And you did mention, there's that embedded part, but there's these other aspects to it. Could you just walk us through real quick a little bit more about what is Windows Embedded IoT?
Good. Yeah, I'd like to bring some history as well, since I've been doing this for 20 years, and some of you who are on the call have been in this business as long as I have, or even longer. You remember Windows CE for automotive, you remember Windows Mobile, you remember a lot of these real-time operating systems that Microsoft created, and that was originally considered the embedded industry. Embedded just meant the operating system was deep within the machine, and you really didn't mess with it much except to create it and then deliver to your end customers. And they were built with the toolkit. But over the time, we went from Windows CE, and then Microsoft bought a company called VentureCom, and they had a component designer. We then saw NT embedded with 30 components, and then it went to XP embedded, and then Windows Embedded Standard 7, and so on. I'll save that for another slide. So Windows Embedded IoT is a family of operating systems that designed to run a dedicated business application or industry application to serve a specific function. We're talking about a retail point of sale machine, MRI machine, industrial automation, those sorts of things. Anything but a general purpose PC. If you were talking general purpose PC, you're not going to see the name embedded in the description of the operating system or the name IoT in the description of the operating system. But also keep in mind that in many cases, in most cases, a Windows IoT operating system will be the binary equivalent to any other operating system sold within Microsoft other channels, with the difference being the licensing policies and things like that, as well as some additional features you're going to find in IoT that are for OEMs. You're going to find some benefits in lifecycle. They're going to be longer lifecycle. There's going to be benefits in the way the device is activated, because if you have a device in the field or a device that's going to be in the field, you want to make sure it can be activated easily. You don't want your customers to have to be burdened with that problem. And then pricing. We talk about pricing here. A lot of times pricing is lower in this for Windows Embedded IoT because of their certain licensing restrictions. And basically that is not for general purpose PC use. So we make it easy. Microsoft makes it easy for OEMs to get into this business because we recognize that you need to sell your products and they need to be affordable. We don't want to burden the BOM with a heavy OS cost. So in a nutshell, Windows Embedded IoT. Good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And oh, sorry about that. Is you've mentioned or alluded to that there are these different editions, these different variants, and along with some of that history, help us navigate through that. You've got a chart here that actually shows the product families. Could you help us navigate this?
No, I sure can. Actually, let me make it a little bit larger on my screen here so I can see it. There you go. So. I mentioned, I want to start there in the beginning, Windows CE, Windows Embedded Compact. We went from CE 2.12 in the late 90s, and on to CE 6, Compact 7, Compact 2013. That's going to be the end of the Windows Embedded Compact family. So if you're on Windows Embedded Compact, we need to have a conversation. Let me help you with the migration plan to some more current operating system. I mentioned NT Embedded, and the progression from NT Embedded went to XP Embedded when Microsoft released XP Pro. And basically, we're talking componentized operating systems. There we were with you're an embedded OEM, you have an application, you have some hardware. Back in the early day, your disk space was small, so you needed a smaller footprint operating system. So this is where Microsoft did create componentized operating systems. Beginning with NT Embedded, I think there were 30 components, went to XP Embedded, there were a few thousand, upwards to when Windows Embedded Standard 7 was released, there were over 13,000 components within that operating system. Windows 8 got released, and they came out with Windows Embedded Standard 8. Not much happened there. And then, I'm going to go down the line really quick here. We also, in this channel, are the Windows 7 Professional, Windows 10, well, it was XP Pro Professional, Windows 10 Professional, not in our channel. Let me be clear. Basically the same full version operating systems, but we just discern which is in our channel by the FES, for embedded systems. And again, that talks to the license policy. Same software, binary equivalent. And all of this leads to, all these client OSs lead to Windows 10. And this is what we're looking at in the far right, Win 10 IoT Enterprise. So this is Microsoft's answer to combine all these different operating systems here into one family of products, which provide different activation methods, a pricing model based on the value of the processor, and different servicing models. And then down at the bottom, we have the server SKUs. I'm going to repeat again. Same server products you see in other channels, but the difference is in our channel, you can license these products and deliver them to your customers with your systems and have all the rights, as opposed to if you're using server on your IT needs, you don't have redistribution rights when using Windows Embedded Server on one of your OEM products. So it's a common problem I see as I talk to folks where they have their IT department, for example, go and do their sourcing. They think I can use the same Windows Embedded Server license from their IT needs, from their enterprise license agreement. But in reality, they don't have the rights to redistribute that software with their products. So there you go. There's a Windows Embedded IoT product with a bit of licensing policy thrown in.
Great,
Good.
thanks. That really helps. Is that there are all these differences, variations and additions. Jeff, you alluded to the licensing, the SKUs. There's that functionality, common bits. But walk us through the sales channel. Walk us through how the path to market goes.
Very good. Yeah, I've thrown out the volume license channel term already. And this is what a lot of people are familiar with. Another way you would hear it called open license or the open business channel. Most of your internet searches, if you're going to search for Win 10 Enterprise, are going to take you to the volume license channel. This by far is the largest revenue generating unit at Microsoft for the OS licenses. And most of the business and the collateral is built around the volume license channel. Secondary to that is that in the middle row, the general purpose OEM channel. Think about machines you might buy from Dell or Lenovo. These are OEM building hardware, and they're putting a Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 Home license on that image and a license. They expect this software to be used by the end user who's buying it directly from maybe a Costco where you're buying your machine, or if you're buying direct from Dell. And lastly, we have the smallest channel from Microsoft, the one I'm going to talk about and have been talking about, the Windows Embedded IoT sales channel. Real quick note, why don't I, can I talk to you about that now? No, I won't, pardon me. Anyway, the OEM Embedded channel.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm doing the head thing in my head. The OEM Embedded channel was created by Microsoft in 1999. Basically, for those OEMs, hardware OEMs, as well as software OEMs. When we think of OEMs, right, we're talking original equipment manufacturers. But you can also be a software OEM. And as a software OEM, you still want to make sure your product, say you buy a PC from a third party, that PC from the third party may not come with the operating system or may come with the Linux operating system, but you have determined that your application is going to run best on a Win 10 IoT type of operating system. So the channel is for both hardware OEMs and software OEMs who are creating these dedicated appliances to run their special application that's optimized for features and does provide a lower price and perpetual licensing rights. There are other advantages of the OEM embedded channel that I'm going to get into as we go forward in this presentation.
Great. And that helps to segue as we move along here, Jeff, is that, we've touched on the OEM embedded is the right channel for Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. Walk us through this, because there are some differences in here. Walk us through what's going on with this chart.
Yeah, not the best chart, I have to admit, but for lack of having another chart, it's here. The first top here, we're talking about the Microsoft channel. And then we talk about the usage, and then the operating systems offered, how it's licensed, price in the way of, a single dollar sign, it's going to be lower price, and just support, and whether it's resellable, which I mentioned already, IoT Enterprise for the volume license channel. You can't bundle it with your OEM product and send it out to your end customers. So Again, we are in the OEM IoT embedded channel. It's for dedicated devices. The operating systems within our channel are Win 10 IoT Enterprise. I should have deleted Core, but also we have Windows Server and SQL Server. The way you're going to see them described is SQL Server for embedded systems and Windows Server for embedded systems, or Win Server IoT Enterprise. I'm sorry, Win Server IoT 2019 and SQL Server IoT 2019. And we talk about a license to the physical device. Both, this is where you buy a perpetual license, you affix that license to your device, you send it out to your end customers. Your customers can use that device for the life of the product. We're talking lower price. And then we talk about, for example, in way of Win 10 IoT Enterprise, support lifecycle. There's different servicing methods. I have another slide that will go into a greater detail here. Let's just leave it for that. The next row, the OEM or system builder channel. This is what we used to call white boxes. They get shipped with Windows 10 or Windows 10 Pro or Home. Again, this is a Dell, Lenovo, or any system builder out there that's building a box that might be sold to a dentist's office, a lawyer. Do whatever you want with it. There aren't any licensing restrictions. It's licensed to the physical device, but your support life cycle is a lot less, and you can resell it. Then the volume license, I've said enough about that. General purpose device for your IoT enterprise needs. And you're going to get that with Windows 10 Enterprise. Note the difference, IoT Enterprise to Win 10 Enterprise. The only difference is IoT, the same software, binary for binary. The only difference is the name, and the name denotes the channel from whence it's sourced. Many times, can't tell you how many, but many times, I'll have folks come to me and say they want to get Windows 10 Enterprise. Then I have to educate them and say, do you want IoT Enterprise? And it might be the other way around. So IoT Enterprise does have that redistribution feature, whereas Enterprise does not. So good stuff, confusing. It's Microsoft. It's the way it's got to be.
So I think this helps, your next slide here helps to just regroup that in together, is that there is names that they sound similar, but one has the IoT in its name and that other variant doesn't.
Yeah. And this is a good slide here because it spells it out for you really quickly. We talk Windows 10 has multiple editions. We know Home, we know Pro, and now we're introducing Win 10 IoT Enterprise for those of you that are new to it. As you know, Pro and Home are going to come with those system builder machines, and they are what they are. They're commercial operating systems, consumer grade. You are stuck with what you get, and you're stuck with what Microsoft wants to do with the operating systems over time. They're going to upgrade, they're going to update, whether you want it or not. Whereas Win 10 IoT Enterprise, you have control. You have the ability to enable advanced lockdown features. You have the ability to get 10 years of support, and pricing is also going to be favorable to you. I'll describe a little bit more what I mean by that in further slides. Yeah, I think that's about it on this one, Greg. That's what we can say here.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned that there are some more that we can dig into, and I think this slide helps drill in there in those different editions. But what's the comparison between them?
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll talk to customers who are using Win 10 Pro, and they got some word from someone, maybe one of their consultants, that say you should be using IoT Enterprise because it has some additional features that you're not getting with Windows 10 Pro. But then their machine has already come with Win 10 Pro, so they've already incurred the cost of buying that operating system. It comes up, sometimes they have to go through this due diligence. When they determine that IoT Enterprise is the better solution, they end up going back to their OEM of the hardware and say, I want you to give me a piece of hardware or embedded PC, industrial PC, without Windows 10 Pro, and I need Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. Conversely, they're going to say, I want Win 10 Pro if they want to get all those new feature updates from Microsoft. And when I say feature updates, every 6 months you're going to get something new from Microsoft that you may like, but if your application is sort of locked down and you don't want any changes, a Win 10 Pro operating system is going to cause you a lot of grief. A lot of grief. Many of you on this call know what I mean. So basically, we're talking Win 10 Pro, general purpose computer, Win 10 IoT Enterprise, dedicated use device. We've talked about which channels you can get them from. I've already mentioned price is going to be more favorable. I'll drill down into this a little bit more by pricing. When you talk Win 10 Pro, what Microsoft used to call the category pricing. Basically, it's the price of the operating system. Win 10 Pro is one price, servers another price, etc. But with Win 10 IoT, they took it and said, well, look, if you're buying a digital signage machine, you can't have your operating system to be more than the cost of your device. So we have what's called a value-based processing model. I'll describe that further in another slide. Support cycle. This to me is key. With Win 10 Professional, it's managed by what we call the semi-annual channel. That's what SAC is there, semi-annual channel. And your life cycle is going to be much shorter. And it's short because Microsoft wants you to move to the next version of Win 10 IoT. I'm not Win 10 IoT, but Win 10 Professional. LTSC is also is what most OEMs use. It's called long-term service channel. No new feature updates, so you're not going to take the risk of your machine being broke. But you do get critical bug fixes and security patches based upon the typical Microsoft update. Customization, yes, a lot more ability to provide enhanced features and enhanced lockdown features like the ones that are listed here. Create custom logins, allow for 2 users to log in, one the admin, another the user of the machine. Applications, of course, Win 10 Professional, you're going to get Hello, Cortana, and all those consumer applications that if you're an OEM with a fixed function device, you don't want your end users logging into the machine and trying to run games and so on. So it's great. Windows 10 IoT Enterprise doesn't include that. And you're not going to get, again, those conflicts that occur. And product key. We'll talk about activation in another slide, but usually Win 10 Professional, unless you do OEM activation, you're going to have one key that's on the license sticker. You type that in and bingo, you're activated. With Win 10 IoT Enterprise, we have several options here. So
great.
Many times I just want to use the term right channel. So if you're talking about Win 10 Pro, you're buying it from a Synex or an Ingram Micro, and you realize you should be using IoT Enterprise, let Advantech help you with the right channeling of your software so you have the best software product to go along with your solution.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And this slide, I think, just kind of recaps some of what you said, but it points out the like the LTSC, the SAC, as well as those activation methods that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. So all I'll really do is speak to a very high level on this slide. When we talk about the hardware requirements, you're going to be buying a PC, an industrial PC, embedded PPC from Advantech or any number of OEMs out there who build hardware. You're going to be determining what processor you put into your machine, depending upon your application and the performance that you need. So Microsoft has created this entry value and high-end SKUs that map to the processor. We'll see in the next slide. We'll get into that more. Again, we've not talked about servicing, LTSC versus SAC. Nothing more to say about that. And ePKEA and PKEA, I'll have another slide, but allow me to say embedded product key entry activation and product key entry activation. Microsoft, as you all know, loves acronyms, and this one rolls off my tongue really well. Just know that ePKEA, the term embedded is in it. Once again, the most overused term in the industry that I know of, but embedded means the key is, once you get the key as a part of your being part of this channel, the one master key is good for 50,000 activations. Whereas PKEA, it's more like the Windows Pro, where you buy the license sticker and the key is on the license sticker. It's a scratch off now, and then you put on your reading glasses and you then read what that sticker is and type it in correctly 3 different times before you get it right, and then you activate. Next slide, if you can find. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Jeff, you touched about like processors, and we talked about the different additions. And I think this is where they start to come together, aligning the different processor types, the silicon, with the different software additions.
Exactly. This is a slide from Microsoft, and if you're an OEM right now in this channel, you're going to get access to this through what we call the Device Partner Center. Supposedly it's updated every 6 months to a year. Sometimes I remember once Microsoft saying it was going to be updated every 3 months. I don't see that happening. But essentially what you're looking at, this is the value-based processor model. So essentially, if you're using an Atom processor, Here's a selection of some of the Atom processors. If you read across the line, if you're using Atom processor, you would license either, you have the ability to license the entry SKU or the value SKU or the high-end SKU. If you're using a Intel Pentium or Celeron or Core i3, Core i5, Core M, you have two choices, the license and value or the high-end SKU. And finally, if you lose, and I don't mean to take away from AMD, but I'm much more familiar with Intel chips as most people are. So I'm going to use the Intel terms. But Core i7 and Xeon, then you have one choice only to use the high-end SKU. And this is interesting. You should be able to put it all together here. But entry, going to be the lower cost SKU. Value, the mid cost, and high-end is going to be the higher cost SKU. And the reason why you see check marks across it, while you're not going to do this, this is Microsoft's way of saying, if you're using an Atom type of processor, if you put an entry license on, or value license, or a high-end license on it, you'll be compliant.
Okay,
and so
it makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now we've talked about the additions. We've touched on lining up the different processors. And you also touched on some of the activations. I think this is just showing it a little bit more visually, that activation icon logo, if you would.
Yeah, so what you're looking at here is what we call the COA, or the Certificate of Authenticity. Also, another name would be the license sticker. Some people call it the product key. I call it the COA, Certificate of Authenticity, or license, or sticker. I go back and forth. So there you see a picture of the PKEA. And like I mentioned, down here, if you can scan closer, that's your key. Once you scratch it off, and you would just enter that key into your screen where it says enter the key. Usually this is done by the OEM in the factory. But if you're an OEM and you're building many different devices, many images and many systems, you want to go to ePKEA. One key is going to be good for 50,000 activations. So enter that key once into your image, then clone that image using your favorite cloning tool, and then get it down on your manufacturing floor, and away you go. Image after image has that one key in it. In order to get that key, you do need to have your Microsoft agreement. I'll get into a little bit more about the agreement later, but for now, know that within the IoT Enterprise software product, within the IoT embedded channel, you have PKEA and ePKEA as the primary methods of activation. But suppose you don't have an internet connection. Or let me back up a second and say that with Win 10 IoT Enterprise, the activation occurs seamlessly behind the scenes. Once your device is on the factory floor or anywhere, are connected to the internet, they will call home to the Microsoft activation servers, and they will activate themselves. You won't even know it. But if there's no internet connection, what are you supposed to be doing? Well, Microsoft suggests you can dial into the 800 number and call them up, but that's not practical for many OEMs. So Microsoft provides a version of activation called deferred activation. Essentially, if it's never connected to the internet, you'll never see the annoying watermark or nag screen, and you'll have all the full functionality of the operating system that you need. If it does connect to the internet at some point in time, it will call home and activate, and thus start the 50,000 activation clock. To those people that are familiar with this Win 10 IoT Enterprise activation method, many people don't know they can track the activations themselves. So I want to put a plug in for the Volume Activation Management Tool, or VOMP tool, which is part of the Windows 8 ADK for the operating system. It's a free download. If you're not using the Volume Activation Management Tool, please do so. It'll help you know where you are with your activations. The worst thing you want to do is have machines out on the factory floor in various VARs or resellers out there that haven't been activated yet, and realize that you've sent out more than 50,000 systems, and that maybe 5,000 or 10,000 are somewhere, warehouse somewhere. And when they get sold to the end customers, you've already exceeded your activations, and no one's going to be happy when that happens.
Great. So, Jeff, we've covered a lot of ground so far. I mean, we've talked about the wide world of IoT, about IoT, the role Windows plays in it, the different Windows editions, the variants, licensing, activation, the channels, the software. We've touched a little bit on the hardware, the platforms. Let's bring it all together now as we start to transition into the Q&A here in a few moments. Walk us through what Advantech does and tying this all together in a nice package.
All right. Let me first start by backing up to the channel, Microsoft Embedded IoT Sales Channel. We're here because Microsoft selected Advantech and a few other distributors within North America because of the support that we can bring to the OEMs who are building devices. Advantech, for example, a hardware OEM of industrial PCs. For every vertical that Advantech builds devices for, you're going to see Microsoft recommending that operating system, Win 10 IoT operating system for that vertical. I mean, it's just a perfect logical fit. So when Advantech builds our hardware, we certify and validate it's going to run either on Windows 10 Pro, because we do have some customers that still want to use Win 10 Pro. But for the most part, it's running Win 10 IoT Enterprise because that's a much better fit. And so when you work with Advantech and use our Microsoft and come to us for your Microsoft software licenses, those are bundled together. But there's a lot of you out there that don't use Advantech hardware. I just want you to know that if that's the case, we sell standalone licenses just like the other distributors in the channel. And what we know and what we have is a talented team of people, myself with over 20 years experience and a few others here that are here to support our customers. If you're licensing from us, we provide free support. We have our own Microsoft Premier Support agreement that we access if we don't know the answers to your questions. This is a very complicated software licensing policy. There's additional rights that we can help you with, like downgrade rights, migration rights, field upgrade rights, roadmap planning sessions. We can help you with troubleshooting issues that occur when you're working with activation, deployment, and connectivity, as well as OS image development configuration. Back in the early days of the XP Embedded Windows Embedded Standard 7, there was a toolkit. So, of course, we did a lot of work like that, helping OEMs build their images. In this case, it's not really an image build, but it's more of an image customization. So should you want to devote your resources somewhere else, Advantech can help you with your image development. Not development, but customization. And back in the beginning, you said, who is Advantech and who is myself? We like to think of ourselves your advocate and your trusted advisor. We're not here to just sell you. We're here to support you. We want you as a long-term customer. We recognize that's the most important way to grow our revenue as well as support your revenue growth.
Outstanding. And again, we started out with that wide world of IoT and enabling that digital transformation. Here's, I assume, another way of just looking at it, recapping some of those industries, some of those use cases, applications, along with some platforms across the bottom.
Yeah, for sure. So most of you can just go to Advantech.com and you'll see the plethora of products we have there. Over 1,500 products, as a matter of fact, of ranging from digital signage on upwards to devices that are used in. Let me just speak to the picture: fleet management, agriculture, and all AI, infrastructure, industrial automation, factories, vehicles, you name it, whatever vertical you're in or product that you're selling, Advantech usually has a board, memory, or full-on device that you can use. Gaming would be one I didn't mention yet, but we have special gaming platforms. Medical, didn't mention that, but you can look to Advantech for most of your embedded PC needs from, again, the Microsoft software license on upwards to the full-on device, as well as components that go into it. And of course, these days now components are very short supply. There's a lot of delays. We may be able to help you if you're having troubles. I can't say we have the magic button, magic solution, but we are large. And the next slide, I think, will show you how large we are. There you go.
That's a great point, Jeff. There's some numbers. There's some numbers there.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, 1,500 standard product offerings. But, these are standard off the shelf, but not, how it goes. Many OEMs, I need more I/O than you have, or I need less I/O, or I need this type of support. So we have a team of engineers ready to help you decide with your customization. Of course, all the different industries served: telecom, gaming, retail, logistics, military, broadcast, healthcare. We work with 27 of the top 30 healthcare companies worldwide. Founded in 1983, original founder is still the CEO today. Currently 1.8 billion in revenue with goals to be 2.5 billion in 2025. We are growing and doing really well. Large partner network. Our length of time being in business has enabled us to grow our partnerships with Intel, Microsoft, NVIDIA, AMD, and so many more. And manufacturing, we just opened up a new manufacturing facility. We have one in Taiwan, one in China, and opening up our new office in Irvine, California, and 8,000 worldwide employees. So when you talk about wanting to partner with a company that's going to be there for you as you grow, Advantech is a great choice.
Outstanding. And as a reminder to everybody out there, we're going to transition into our Q&A here in just a moment. So go ahead and keep submitting those questions. Here's also a reminder that there are some links where you can access and get some extra information about Advantech, about the topics, including a link to a video that you can watch, and that this whole session is being recorded so that you can come back and play it again and play it slower or faster, or whatever you decide to do. But with that in mind, Jeff, are you ready for some Q&A?
I hope there's some. Yep. Let me have them.
I was just looking at it. There's some good ones out there. Hey, Tracy, how about doing some Q&A with us?
That'd be great. I'd be happy to. And as Greg said, please submit your questions and we'll get to as many as we can. The first question is from Bill, and it's, my systems are never connected to the internet for many reasons, but the most important one is that they are located in remote locations. How am I supposed to activate them?
Well, this would be that perfect case I mentioned earlier, deferred activation. You don't need to activate them. All you need to do is do what you would normally do. Build your images, build your machines, deliver around to your customers, and they're going to run just fine. There's no issues whatsoever. It's called deferred activation. Microsoft put together an activation guide that goes into greater detail. We can send to you if you need it. Just know that if it ever is connected to the internet, it will call home and activate itself. And from that point on, your countdown will occur for when other devices are connected to the internet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. Here's another question. Is there a way for me to track the number of activations if I use the EPKEA method for activating my Windows 10 IoT and images?
Sure, that would be using the volume activation management tool. That's available when your Windows 8 ADK. I can also, should you want to contact me directly, send you a link to where you can download. Just need to know what version of the operating system you're using.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Here's a question from Larry. What is end of license and end of support? How does it affect my business?
Okay, these are two important terms from Microsoft, EOS and EOL, or EOL and EOS. End of support is probably the most relevant because it's of the shorter time frame. Usually for legacy operating systems, it's 10 years. And legacy, I mean those operating systems that are like Windows 7 Pro for embedded systems or Windows Embedded Standard 7. But with IoT, support length is 10 years. So end of support means that's the last date Microsoft is going to provide you with security patches or critical bug fixes. Now, in the case of XP Pro, Windows 7 Pro, for example, many different OEMs are still using Windows 7 Pro. Microsoft did create a program called the Extended Support that they're offering at a very expensive cost should you need to continue to support Windows 7 operating system out in the field. But for the most part, you're looking at end of support, 10 years, no more security patches or bug fixes. End of life, different. This is when you can no longer purchase licenses and distribute systems with those software and licenses to your end customers. But keep in mind, End of life, since these are perpetual licenses, once those systems are delivered to your end customers, they can continue to use those systems as long as the hardware works for them.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great information. We have another question here, and is there any agreement required in order to buy Windows Embedded?
Good. I'm glad someone asked that question, because there is. There is, let me back up and go say, in the enterprise license agreement that many people are probably familiar with, there's a commitment purchase agreement that you negotiate directly with Microsoft or one of Microsoft partners, may it be Synex, Ingram, Tech Data, CDW, you name it, where there is some sort of price provided based upon a commitment. In this channel, you have what's called the OEM Customer License Agreement. We call it the CLA for short. It's a non-commitment, it's non-purchase agreement. Basically, it's where you agree to the terms and conditions that Microsoft asked you to agree to in order to license from the channel. It's a non-negotiable agreement, 26 pages long. It's handled via a DocuSign process. Once you request it, we get it in your hands the same day. From there, you review it. If you DocuSign it right away, you're pretty much automatically approved, and you will get an email back from Microsoft saying, welcome to the channel. And from there, we can go in and provide you all the software you need, as well as the license keys you might need to deliver your product to your end customers. So basically, the CLA is that agreement. And along with that, there's some other agreements we can get into, such as the product terms, which are specific to the CLA. And then there's the EULA that you'll need to pass on, which combine the product terms as well as the CLA that we want to make sure your end customers know what the rights are to use that software.
Great. Excellent. How about this question from Chris? Where and how does Azure, including IoT Hub and IoT Edge, fit into this?
Well, this is not my focus today, but just think of IoT Enterprise as your edge computing device. This is where the operating system lives on your machine that's at the edge, at your customer's location. This is where it's connected. If it's connected and it has sensors in it, and it's collecting data. So from there, that data needs, if you want to analyze that data and do more with that data to get better business value from your data, and you've chosen Microsoft as your cloud provider, Azure IoT Edge and IoT Hub and IoT Central are products from Microsoft that are incorporated into the Azure platform. Greg might be able to shed some more light on those things if there's time.
Yeah, I mean, real quickly do you want to do everything out at the edge? Do you want to do some things at the core, back at the cloud, or some hybrid? And that's where the Azure services come into play with the IoT Hub, the IoT Edge, being able to leverage the cloud for that deeper, more intensive processing and storing of information, but also enabling that processing out at that edge, whether it's inference, AI, cognitive, image recognition analysis. That's where they can play in a hybrid type of environment.
Okay, thank you both. Here's a question from Danny. Is there any migration path from Win 10 Pro to Win 10 IoT Enterprise?
That's another good question, yeah, because I talked about right channeling earlier. So, and migration paths from Microsoft can be complicated. I think the short answer is yes and no. I mean, yes, certainly if you're using Win 10 Pro on the machines today, you can easily create as long as your hardware will support it, you can easily build yourself a Win 10 IoT Enterprise, of course, once you sign the CLA, and deliver that updated image or new image to your machines, whether they be in the field or on the factory floor. You still will need to buy a new license. So that Win 10 Pro license, there isn't an upgrade price or any means where we can save you any money based upon the current business model. But you can think of it this way. If you are going from Win 10 Pro to Win 10 IoT Enterprise and you're using an Atom processor, at the end of the day, in the long run, your costs for the operating system will be reduced because you're going from a full price operating system to an embedded IoT price operating system, and that'll be at 2/3 the cost of your full price operating system. So summarize, you just would make your choice. You would just make your change, Win 10 Pro to Win 10 IoT Enterprise. And if you could do it in the field upgrade, if you're connected over the air, and you could do it that way, or you could roll a truck with your new image and the license sticker and make that replacement. Sorry, too many R's.
Okay, thank you. And now I have another question, but it's rather long, so I'll read it slow, and then if you want me to read it back, I can read it back to you guys. And it's I've been using Windows Embedded Standard 7E on my embedded systems, and I've been very happy. But with the EOS, I have to move to a more current OS. I especially like the fact the OS was compartmentalized, which allowed me to build an OS image with a smaller footprint. Is Win 10 IO ENT a componentized OS?
Yeah, I talked about that in brief there before. Earlier in the conversation here today, it's not a componentized operating system. There is a new version coming out. I do want to mention right now. Let me quickly do a plug here. Windows IoT Enterprise started out with Win 10 IoT Enterprise 2015. A year later, came out with Win 10 IoT Enterprise 2016. 3 years later, and I'm talking about the LTSC versions, by the way. 3 years later, we came out with Win 10 IoT Enterprise 2019. And here we are, 3 years later, in the fall of 2021, we're going to see Win 10 IoT Enterprise. Right now, we're calling it vNext. I would expect it to be Win 10 IoT Enterprise 2021. And in that, there is rumor that there are additional components, more componentization allowed or included in this newer version. But the backup, Microsoft realized after Windows Embedded Standard 7 and when 8 was released that big Windows was too big a power play for this embedded group, and everything wanted to, and they were making the decisions as to what was being done in the embedded channel. So someone made the call that no more investment was going to be done in the componentized operating system vein, and if you wanted to use if you're in the embedded channel or you're an OEM, then we're going to make available to you the same software from big Windows, but we're going to give you some additional features rather than componentization. And really, when you think about it, componentization was important back in the day when memory was more expensive and we didn't have the size memory that we have today. Nowadays, your devices out in the field are they're much more capable of handling a much larger operating system image, where componentization is not that important. But what we can do in IoT Enterprise is turn on and off services, so you can reduce your footprint that way and reduce your security risks as well by turning on and off these services that IoT Enterprise allows you to do.
Okay. Very nice. It looks like we have time for one more question, and okay. Are there advantages of using Windows 10 IoT based approach versus low to no cost of open source software?
Well, that's the typical. Yeah,
go for it, Jeff.
Yeah, well, I'll just go briefly. I mean, I've been talking about this for years. Mostly it was related to Windows CE and Linux at the time, or VxWorks, or any of those embedded operating systems. But the primary thing you want to consider is if you have a team of software developers on your team, on your staff, and they can easily manage a Linux build and keep that Linux build up to date, then Linux may be cost effective for you. But for the most part, many OEMs do not. Many enterprise customers do not have the 15,000 developers that Microsoft has on team developing Windows 10, the Windows 10 IoT, or Windows 10 product line. So think about it. This is, like I say, the age-old argument is Linux free versus Windows. Sure, there's a small fee for the Microsoft Windows operating system, but I think most Linux builds these days, there's a license fee as well if you want it supported. Am I right, Greg?
Absolutely. And I think a key point is for those who are looking for more information about resources, paths to take, development, all those associated things, is go visit the Advantech website and your resources page.
Yeah. Good. That sums it up for me.
Outstanding. Great. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. That was a great Q&A. We had lots of questions today. And I want to just talk a little bit more about what Greg said. You can find more resources on this URL, on your audience URL there, to go to their website, and you can email them too. So please go ahead and check those out and be sure to do that. And with that, I really want to tell you guys how much I appreciated your presentation, how much I learned from it, and I thought it went exceptionally well. So with that, I want to thank the audience for attending this webcast, sponsored by Advantech and presented by Visual Studio Magazine and RedmondMag.com. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. This concludes today's webcast.